All right, this is part 4 of the portfolio document creation, and we've just finished setting up all of our paragraph styles, which are going to define the way that our type looks like. And we've also set up 2 of our character styles, the bold and bold italic. So the next thing we need to do before we start dropping in content, and again, I'll emphasize that this is a pre-created layout, right, that we're just kind of reproducing. When you're actually designing something original, it's not typical that you would just kind of set all of this stuff up before you start adding any content to the document, right? This is going to evolve organically. You're going to be playing around with things and experimenting. But again, just for the sake of creating a concise instructional, document video, we're just creating all this stuff, setting everything up, and then dropping in content, right? So just understand that it's a little bit of an artificial workflow that we're following, but that's okay for the purpose of just learning how to set things up in InDesign. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is start to generate our different sort of templates, our parent pages for different types of content, right? So right now, everything is kind of referencing that A parent page, which we set up a couple of videos ago. Where we've basically got this 2-column layout with a margin that has some space for the pagination. So now that we've actually got our paragraph styles defined, I'm just going to delete some of this stuff that we made earlier. I will double click to enter this parent, and now that we've got our type figured out, we can actually start to add in the text box for the pagination and start to include that. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is use my type tool to drag out a text box. And I will apply my pagination paragraph style to that text box. Now there's something kind of tricky that I've noticed here, and that is that if I go back to my character styles, this is selected by default. I must have clicked it at some point. So anything I type, again, because a character style kind of supersedes a paragraph style, it's going to have this applied to it. And so it might not make sense, right? Like if I just start typing out here, like, why is this bold italic? That's not how I, defined my pagination paragraph style. And it's because I've accidentally applied a character style on top of it, right? So I want to select the entire text box, make sure I have none selected. And it's always good practice just to click away from everything. Anytime you have something that's not formatting the way that it should be in your head, just click away from everything, go to your character styles and make sure it's clicked back to none, right? So that I'm not just applying a blanket character style to everything that's going to override any other type of styling I've applied. Anytime I create a new text box, right? We don't want that. So that's something that happens fairly frequently, at least to me when I'm working on documents, is I accidentally applied a character style and then just had it still selected, and then I'm making new content that's not working the way that it should, and that's why. It's because a character style is just selected and been applied to it. So, okay, going back to our pagination. Basically what we want is to create a running page number on all of our spreads. So I'm going to delete this text, and what I'm going to do is go up to type, and I'm going to say insert special character, marker, current page number. And it's going to give us that A, and that A is just a stand-in symbol for current page number. Now you can see that it's applied to the right, and really we want it to be on the left because we want it to be down in this left-hand corner. And the reason that we specified this to be right aligned is that the way that right alignment works is that by default, everything follows this right edge, right? It's aligned to the right. But if we use our tab key, it basically splits it. So it sends whatever is on the left side of that tab over to the left side of the text box, and everything that's not stays on the right alignment, right? So I could hit tab, and we can see that A jumps across to the left side of the page there. And now I might just type in some filler text, right, to demonstrate that we've got text on the left and we've got text on the right. So now I'm going to get my black arrow tool, and I'm going to use the shortcut Command-Option-C, which just automatically fits the frame to the content. So with text, it's just going to make it shrink down. Actually, there's a better way to do that. I'm gonna undo that, and I'm gonna use the let's see, type, or maybe it's under object, text frame options, and we'll actually just set the auto size to the height only option, and then it will just automatically make sure that that text box is sized to the height of the text that's in it, and then I don't have to worry about like resizing and stretching that thing as we go. So I'm going to use this auto sizing height only feature to make sure that no matter what I do here, it's always going to be the correct size, which is just the size of the type that we've applied. Okay, so now I need to stretch this out. I'm going to zoom in here. Let's see if I can, that's annoying. It's kind of, we lost it. Okay, stretch this out to one margin. And then we need to do the same thing on the other side, stretch this out to the other margin. And then we're going to move it down. And the idea is to get it centered between the bottom of the page and the bottom of this margin, or I guess the top of this bottom margin. There's no real snap that we can get here, which is kind of annoying. So what we have to do is kind of cheat and just make a shape. So I'm just going to drag something out. And I'm just going to delete the fill and delete the stroke so it's just a box. But I'm going to drag it so that it's at that bottom margin, and I'm going to copy and drag it so that it's at the bottom of the page. And then I'm going to select all three of these things. I'm going to go over to my Align panel, and I'm going to choose this Distribute Spacing option, which is basically just going to say I want all the spaces between everything that's selected to be either the same or set to a specific increment. But just by default, it's just going to make it the same. So I'm going to click Distribute Vertical Space, and then that's going to be snapped basically to be equidistant between these two blocks that we drew. So that's how you can get something kind of centered if you don't have like a natural guide or a snap. Okay, so that is our pagination on one side. Now we need to get it on the other side. This way I can just align it to the center of the page. But this is kind of flipped, so we need to take this text and cut it out, and I'll backspace to get back to the original right alignment. And then I'll paste that text, so we've got our filler. And then I'm just going to use that tab key again to split the difference, right? So now in this case, it's the opposite of our other side, right? Now I've got my filler text bumped to the left here, and my page number sticks out to the right. Now in our template, what we want to do is to make sure that these page numbers are a little bit bolder and kind of stand out a little bit from this other filler text, which will eventually be our section heading and some other navigational information. But so what we want to do is highlight that character that represents our page number and apply this character style that says bold so that it just stands out a little bit more. And we need to do the same thing on the other side. Apply this bold character style to that page number. And maybe now we can go look and see what's happening in our document. So I'll go back to my arrow tool, and we'll just click back so that we're in the actual document in itself. And now you can see we've got, our filler text, which is just referencing our parent page, but our text variable that is changing based on the current page number is showing us on each page what page we're on, right? So it's doing its job. We've got this bold page number at the bottom left and bottom right corner of each spread that allows us to just kind of navigate through the document. So we're doing well so far. What we need to do is go back to our parent page and finish styling this. So if we look at our reference, which I don't have open, basically there's a little bit of a line character next to each of these page numbers. So what I'm going to do is grab my line tool, and I'm going to drag out a vertical line. And I believe that it is set to 0.5 point, so it's a little bit of a thinner line. It has the primary swatch applied to the stroke, and then we don't need a fill, it's just a stroke, so we can say get rid of the fill. And then this line is going to sit to the inside of our page number, so we need to zoom in here, stretch that to be the correct height, the same height as the text. And then the way that we can kind of get this to bump the character or the page number out is to use what's called text wrapping. So if we open this text wrap panel, basically text wrapping is just like when you want a graphic element to move text out of the way, at a specified or at in a designed way, I guess you could say. So there's a few different options. I'm just going to click this first one, besides no text wrap, which says wrap around bounding box. So if I click that, you can see already that the type is kind of moved out of the way of that shape. But we can actually set it to have a little bit of a margin. So I'm going to unclick this link so that we're only specifying one of these dimensions. And over here, where we're talking about the right side of the object, I'm just going to key up. And you can see that it's creating kind of a buffer, right? And it's saying, within 1/16 of an inch of this object, no text should sit in that spot, right? So that's kind of doing what we want it to do. We've applied that text wrap. We're going to do it to the other side too, though, which means we need to copy it. And instead of the right side, we need to apply it to the left side. So I'll key down to 0. And then on the left side, we'll key that up to 1/16 of an inch. And then I'm just going to Command X to cut that. Go over here to our other page number. Command V to paste it back to where it was. And then just kind of slide it in there. This is what I'm talking about in terms of things kind of starting to get tricky with alignment. So I'm going to start to use my keyboard shortcuts. I'm going to select both of these things. I'm going to click again on this to make it kind of the anchor object. And then I'm going to use my Option - keyboard shortcut to automatically align them to center. And then I'm going to use Option and the kind of right pointing caret to say we want to align to the right there. And then it's exactly in the spot that I want it to be in. And again, now if we click back to our document, we can see that we've got a nice little 3 with a little sort of orange line that just kind of adds a nice little graphic element next to each of those page numbers. Okay. The last thing that we need to do with our pagination is to create, first of all, we want this to be our name. So the person, the author, right? I want that to be referenced in my portfolio. I want anyone reading this thing to know that it's mine and this is my work that you're looking at. But on the inside margin of every page, on the left-hand side, we want this to follow the section that the project that we're currently looking at. So if whatever the project title is on that section heading, I want to filter in to this spot, right? Which means we need a text variable. And it might be helpful to come back to that part after we create our other parent pages. So I think that's what I'm going to do. We've kind of taken this as far as we want to for the moment. Now we need to start creating those section dividers, which would be a different parent style, before we start getting into using those text variables to automatically generate that information here. So I'm just going to save the document. And then I'm going to, we're just going to duplicate this. I'm just going to say duplicate. And then I'm going to change, actually, let's start naming these things. So the first one we want to be A, spread. This one we will call B, blank. We just want a blank page with nothing on it. So this is just going to be a version of our layout that doesn't have any page numbers in case there's content we want just to be on a blank page. And we'll also just get rid of the columns. So we'll go back to one column, which is essentially no columns, and hit OK. Now we've got our blank spread. And now if there's anything that we wanted to not really have any page numbers on or any content, like our table of contents, for example, we could just apply this blank page. And then we want another one. So I'm going to say, we'll just copy this again, and we'll call this our section divider. Hit OK. And for our section divider, what we want to do is basically pull out a nice block of color for the left-hand page that just creates a nice big visual separation between the different projects, and then our titling information over here on the right. So the first thing I'll do is create that color block. So I'm just going to drag out this rectangle, which already has our primary swatch color applied to it. I don't want any stroke, so I'm going to delete that stroke. So we just have the orange fill. And in fact, I'm tired of that popping up by default. So I'm just going to, while I've got nothing selected, if I just like get rid of that stroke, it'll stop just automatically applying it to new shapes that I make. So I'm going to select that orange. This is an example of somewhere that I'd use like these little quick keyboard shortcuts just to get things in line. So I'm going to hold down Option and Command to reference the page that I'm working on, and then just use the pipe and the hyphen keys to kind of get it in the middle. And now I've got like less steps to work through. So I can just hold down my Option key to equally drag this thing out, drag it out a little further to get to that bleed margin. And then same thing vertically, I can just hold Option to pull out from the center, right? And now I only have to do that once rather than pulling out the top and then the bottom separately. Okay, so we've got our color there. The next thing we need to do is add our titling information. So I'm going to create a text box. And let's say we will call this title and then subtitle. I'm just giving us some little placeholder text to work with. And now we're going to come over here to our paragraph styles, and under subtitle, I'm going to make sure I have the subtitle text applied to it, which automatically gives us that italic orange larger text that's aligned to the right. Same thing here. I'm going to take title and I'm going to apply the title paragraph style to it, which gives us that nice big bold 48-point font to really send that project title clearly. Okay, so I'm going to pull out our margins to get them where we want them to. And then I'm going to pull this down. If we looked at our sample document, this titling information is kind of somewhere, like it's not centered. It's obviously not up at the top because that's where our number goes, but it's also not all the way down at the bottom, right? And maybe to give us some help there, I will actually, in this parent page that is made for our section dividers, I'll create some horizontal guides. So what I can do is, in addition to the margins and columns, I can say create guides, and I can create, let's see what dividing that into 3 looks like. So I'm going to say I want to create 3 rows. I'm going to turn preview on so we can see what we're doing. And you can see that right now they have a gutter, which I don't really need. So I'm gonna put that gutter down to 0 so that we're just making lines basically and not sort of double lines. And we're also fitting these lines to the overall page dimensions. That's why this middle section in relation to our margins looks bigger than the top and bottom. So I'm going to change this to margins. And now you can see that we get these 2 horizontal lines that are kind of evenly dividing based on our margins, this section into 3 equal parts. And that's kind of what I'm looking for, I think. I think I want this information to be about 2/3 of the way down the page. So I'm going to hit OK. And now if we zoom in, we've got a horizontal guide to pull our text up to kind of keep it, at a designed format rather than just kind of arbitrarily deciding where we want that text to go. And then the last thing we need to do for our section dividers is create the section number, right? So for each project, we want the first, second, third, etc. project, and we want that to become kind of a logical indicator that helps with navigation, but also is just kind of a nice graphic element. So what we'll do is we'll create a new text box, and I'm just going to type 01, and then we will apply our section number paragraph style, which gives us that kind of fancy one that's got a little bit of a wider base and is nice and big, and it's automatically centered for us. And then what we're going to do is use a stroke around this to create that kind of bounding box. So we'll go to our stroke option. We will just say, let's add a 1-point stroke. Click away, see what that looks like. This looks really heavy. Like the stroke is actually thicker than the letter itself. I kind of want the stroke line to kind of approximate, whatever this letter is. So let's see if we can just lighten that up a little bit. Maybe cut it in half. Okay, so we change that to 1/2 of a point. Oh, I've lost myself. And that's a lot closer. Now that stroke weight is a little bit closer. Maybe we could actually make it like 3/4 of a point. Yeah, we'll leave it like that. Okay, so we've got this bounding box. Obviously, this looks stupid, right? The bounding box is way too big and it's not centered vertically. So I know already that I want the size of this box to be 1 3/8 by 1 3/8. So 1 3/8 square. So I'm going to say 1.375, 1.375. And now I've got the correct size of the box. I'm also going to, this is just like a nitpicky thing, but you can see that the stroke is applied kind of like centered on the bounding box. For something like this, I actually want the stroke to be kind of included within the bounding box. So I'm going to say a line stroke to inside, and now you'll see that that stroke kind of snaps into that bounding box. And we can see that now we've got something that's like slightly undersized. So I need to adjust these dimensions using the arrow keys to get them back to where we wanted them. But I just think this is a little bit cleaner, having all of the stroke fall within the side that square, rather than kind of splitting that difference. And obviously the last thing we need to do is make sure that this text is not just stuck up there at the top of this box. So we need to use our text frame options and change the vertical justification, which would kind of mean like the vertical alignment to the center rather than the top. And now we get that text snapped right in the middle of that text box. And I'll hit OK. And that's what we want. We want this nice light but kind of large number indicator of what project we're on. And since this is a placeholder, I might just change this to like a placeholder character rather than an actual letter or number. And I'm going to use my keyboard shortcuts again, this time set to the margin, just to snap that to the top right-hand corner there. And this is our section divider. So what we can do is click back to our document, and then maybe on this spread here, we can apply that parent page to this spread. So we will right-click and say Apply Parent to Spread. We want to apply the section divider, and there we go. We get that automatically filtered down. Now, we covered this a little bit in class, but by default, anything that's on a parent page is going to be locked, right? Which means that now that I'm in my document, which we can see because I can zoom out and see the whole thing, I can't actually like select any of this stuff, right? So I can't actually change the title of a project. And in order to do that, we basically just need to shift, command, click. So holding down shift and command, we can click on this text box, and now all of a sudden it's sort of activated, right? And basically it's just unlocked it from that parent page, and now we can edit it. So it's important to note that like we're changing this thing now, right? So we don't have the original content that was on this section divider parent page to work with anymore. We're kind of modifying it and changing it. But it's still kind of an easier way to work than having to recreate this every time, right? Is being able to shift and command click to access it and then change it to whatever you want. So I think our first project is going to be called Auto. And just notice too that even if I don't have like caps lock enabled and I'm not actually typing caps, like I'm not holding down shift, I'm not caps locked, I'm just typing auto, it should be lowercase, but because we specified in our paragraph style that this should be all caps text, it's giving us all caps text. And then the subtitle, I honestly can't remember what the subtitle is. Let's say, well, let's just reference it. Maybe we can open up that original template, a unified pour over. There we go. A unified pour over. And if we shift and command click again up here with our section number and type in a 1 because this is our first project, now we've actually used our section divider parent page to set up all the formatting, and then we've shift command clicked to access some of those assets and actually specify what we want, right? And so then later in this document, if we wanted, let's say pages 10 to 11 to also have a section divider applied to them, right? Down here, it's just going to be our default information that we had up on our section divider, right? And when it gets to be the time to specify what this project is and what number it is, then we could shift command click to access some of those assets and specify them. But this now brings us back to our pagination, like our navigational information, right? Because down here, if we zoom in, we've got the page numbers, right? So we've got our little graphic element, we've got our page number, we've got our name, but in this corner, we want this to read to be the current section, the current project that we're on. So we really want this to read as auto. And so now what I'm going to do is go back to my spread parent page. Again, you can see we're in the parent page because we're not looking at our whole document. We're just looking at this individual page. And now I'm going to select this, and I'm just going to delete it. And what I'm going to do is create two different text variables. And a text variable is basically a command that tells InDesign to look through the document, and anywhere that it finds a particular paragraph style, to copy that text and paste it into this area that we've got selected. That might not make sense now, but it should make sense after we generate one. So we're going to make two text variables. The first is going to reference the section number. So it's going to give us the correct 1, 2, 3, etc. that we're on in terms of the project. And then the second thing it's going to do, the second one we'll create, is going to reference the name of the project, right? It helps to do them separately. Okay, so we've got our cursor in there. We're going to go to type, text variables, and define, because we want to make a new one. There's not currently one that gives us what we want. And this is kind of like the type of text variable you want to create. We're going to say running header, right? Basically, this is just kind of a simple text variable that's going to serve the purpose that we're looking for. So we're going to select that kind of default preset and then click New. And now it's going to allow us to actually kind of name this variable and give it some information. So this we're going to call section number. And it's going to be a running header based on a paragraph style. That's very important, right? We want the document to search for a paragraph style. The paragraph style that we want it to search for is going to be the section number, right? We want it to look through the document, find the most recent section number that's been applied in one of those dividers, and then copy and paste that information. So we'll say section number. We're just going to leave this to use first on page. The text before and text after, we can just leave blank. Basically, we don't need to add anything else. We're just going to basically take this paragraph style and reference it and create a text variable based on it. So I'll hit OK. And then once we're finished, we've got it selected, and we'll hit Insert. And now you can see right where my cursor was loaded, I've got this section number kind of placed within these two brackets. And that's telling me that I've inserted a text variable. Now we need to make another one for the actual project name. So we'll do another one. We will select running header. We'll say new. We're going to call this one project title. And this time, the style that we want it to look for is the title of the project, right? We want to select this title paragraph style that we specified earlier. So I'm going to click that. Again, we're just going to leave it to first on page. We're not going to change anything else. We're just going to say OK. And then we're going to insert that into our text box. And now I'm going to hit done. So we've created these two text variables. I'll click away, so nothing's selected. And now if we jump back to our document here, right, we can see here on this very first page, all we have is the page number and my name, because this is a right-hand facing page. Then we've got our section divider, right, which has our title and our project number listed. And if we scroll down to our spread, what we should have over here is the 01, which is referencing this. And then we've got the project name, which is referencing this paragraph style, right? And we can see all the way down, if we continue to scroll, we're still on that first project called auto. until we get to our next section divider, right, where there's just generic placeholder information. And then we can see now that, well, let's see, that should read as, maybe it's because we haven't actually activated this text yet. So maybe I'll Shift Command click and then go down and see what happens. Yeah. So that's what's happening. Basically, because it's still sort of locked onto that parent page, it's not actually reading it as in the document. But once I Shift and Command click, I kind of unlock it. And now if I change this to 02, and maybe I'll just leave that as title for now, we should be able to come down here and it says 02 title. And if I hit undo, right, now it goes back to that placeholder X. So handy feature, basically using those paragraph styles to specify our hierarchy for our type. And then we're actually using that hierarchy to kind of work for us and create these running footers at the bottom of each page without having to go in and reorganize them. The nice thing about doing it this way is that, let's say you're redesigning or reorganizing your content. Like, let's say I wanted to take this whole project and move it after this project, right? Well, if I was having to, like redo all these footers manually, right? This stuff would all still stay as, that first project. But because it's just referencing and automatically updating, I can rearrange this thing all I want, and it's going to automatically generate those different footers, basically. Cool. So I think stylistically, we just need to adjust this a little bit. It's a little tight. It doesn't really make sense that all this text runs together. So I'm going to jump back to my parent page. And now that I've got these text variables to work with, I can still, right now, like if I use my arrow keys to navigate, it's reading this as one character. So even though they look like they're kind of multiple characters typed out, they're just kind of one big block. So if I try to highlight one, it just highlights the whole thing. But what we want to do is just add a period after the number and then a space. So we got period, space, and then let's see what that looks like. I'll just double click this page. And I think that looks fine, right? So now we've got our first project number with a period and a space to separate it from the project name, which is auto. And I think that's good. I think we're going to leave it like that. Cool. I'm toggling back and forth between preview mode and non-preview mode, by the way, which is just the W key. So if you type W, it's just going to give you this like preview mode, which takes away all your guides and makes things look the way that they're going to look on print. And then if you click it again, it goes back to the kind of grid mode, the design mode. And again, just if you Shift W, you can go to like a full screen preview mode. And if you Shift W again, it goes back to the normal design mode. Anyways, the last thing we're going to do in this video is create our final parent page, which is going to be sort of the dark version of our spread. And maybe to simulate that, what I'll do is drag out just on one of these pages here, a dark shape that fills the whole spread. I'm going to use my shortcuts to just make sure it's in the center so that I can then just like drag out in 2 moves rather than 4. Okay, and so right now we've got a dark spread. That's kind of what we're simulating here. Obviously in a dark spread, our page numbers go away, right? Because they're black. So what we need to do is create a copy of our spread that has those inverted kind of white text characters or paragraph styles applied to them. So I'm going to duplicate this parent, and now I'm going to get D. Maybe I'll just drag it down to, well, no, I'll leave it where it is. That makes sense. And I'm going to change the name to spread dark for dark spread. And the only thing I'm going to do down here is I'm going to change all of these. I'm just going to select the text boxes, and I'll go to my paragraph styles, and instead of the pagination that's in the regular folder with black text, I'm going to select pagination under the invert folder, which is going to give us white text, which makes everything invisible. The other thing I'm going to do is change these little graphic elements to have a white stroke instead of an orange stroke, just in case that orange isn't very contrasty against a dark background. I know the white is going to be pretty contrasty. So I'll select both of those guys and change them to white or paper. And now I've got an exact copy of my spread with all my pagination information, except it's going to be designed for a dark background and contrast with white text as opposed to just blend in with the black text. So if we jump back to our simulated dark spread, you can see we don't have anything, which is a problem, right? Right now, this box that we sort of dragged is covering up that pagination, right? So I should be able to see, even though the text is black, I should be able to see that little orange bar, but I can't, right? And the only way, there's no way that I can send this thing to the back. I'm trying using the keyboard shortcut, but it won't go. And it's because the pagination is locked onto the spread. And I don't want to unlock it because then it would just be in the way and it would just kind of be clunky. And so this is where adding an additional layer is going to be very helpful. So I'm going to jump back to my spread parent page. Again, I'll zoom out so you can see we're working on the parent, not the document. And I'm going to create a new layer. So right now I've got my content layer, but everything I'm making, including this pagination, is on that content layer, right? Which starts to make situations like that, right, where I want my pagination to always be in front, kind of impossible, right? Because if they're locked on that parent page, I'm not going to be able to move the pagination in front of content. So what I need to do is just create a new layer. So I'm going to create the plus sign here, and I'm going to rename this pagination. And now I'm going to grab all of this stuff, select it all, and then move it up to my pagination layer, right? And because this layer is on top of the content, I know that now my pagination is always just going to be on top of content no matter what. So I'm going to first make sure that I do that on my dark spread as well. So select everything, go back to layers, move that up to pagination. And once I've got it, I'm just going to lock it, right, and just sort of not be able to edit it and leave it alone. And now if I go back to my document, first of all, if I drag this black box down to where it should be, right, now you can see that the pagination is actually sitting in front of it. But we still have that issue, just center that, where we haven't applied our dark spread, right? So we need to select both of these pages, apply parent to page, and now we need to apply our dark spread, which gives us that white pagination. I'll enter the preview mode and the little white character next to the page number, right? So we've kind of fixed two things, right? We've given ourselves some flexibility in design so that if we wanted to have like a full page image or sketch or something that contrasted too little with our page number and information, we've given ourselves a sort of inverted version, right? So we can be a little bit more flexible in how we design our document. We've also created another layer to keep our page numbers and our navigation information just always at the top, sitting on top of the content so that we're never hiding anything or covering anything up. But because they are on a parent page, it's not editable, right? So when I'm in my document actually designing things, it's very, it's easy because I'm never going to be actually accidentally selecting some of that stuff or moving it around. And that pretty much concludes this stage of the document. So we've pretty much got everything set up. We've got our parent pages set the way that we want them. We've got our margins and columns and swatches and paragraph styles and all that good stuff set up. So right now we are pretty much ready to start laying out some content. So that'll be in the next video.